Right, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us on our webinar. My name is Kieran James, and this is in conversation with Matt Sedgwick. So clearly, coming out of COVID-19, many are going to need to focus on rebuilding their business, rebuilding teams, rebuilding brand awareness, rebuilding revenue, all these different things. And having created over 27 sales teams, built entire sales departments from scratch, and growing the Key Focus Consulting brand now, who are experts in helping businesses attract talent, Matt Sedgwick is probably one of the most well-placed people to speak to around rebuilding. So Matt, nice to have you with us.
Thanks so much, and hello everyone.
So Matt, we're obviously conscious of people's times. We're going to kick off quite quickly with this one. Let's tell us a bit about your background, sort of obviously your work history, where you started, and what we'll do is hopefully we'll move chronologically through and talk about sort of COVID-19 and how that's affected your business, things like that as well. So let's start at the beginning. Talk a bit about what makes you.
Yeah, of course. And background's an interesting one, and I think putting a bit of context around it, can I understand how I'm here today? But I don't think it was a traditional route into owning businesses. My family's certainly not got that background. But I grew up in Stoke-on-Trent, and essentially grew up with a totally different aspiration of becoming an actor. So I worked incredibly hard during those years to, kind of find out a lot more about myself and, go towards that kind of professional acting route. I came to a bit of an end when mum and dad told me I needed to go to university. So, the acting dream was over after a few adverts and TV work and, a bit of stage shows.
Somebody famous.
Do you know what? I was hoping for it, and a few of my really good friends are, really doing very well. But I had to take a different route. Unfortunately, we didn't have much money as a family, and I was the first person to go to university. I think I was put on as the golden child, so had to take a slightly different route. Fast forward to 21, I finished a degree at the University of Birmingham and wanted to come down to London. I put myself in a position where I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do, but I'd give it a real go, whatever I did. And mum and dad told me, no matter what, just don't get a job in sales. So typically I went away and got a job in sales, but more importantly in recruiting sales professionals as well. So realistically, that was my first entry into the sales world. I spent 2.5 years with that business and decided, maybe naively, that I was going to set up my first business at the age of 23. I set up a graduate recruitment business that ran for 7 years, and then since last Jan, I set up Key Focus, and typically we're invited into businesses looking to build recruitment strategy, attract candidates and sales candidates, or we can help them with their recruitment as well.
So tell me about your transition from employment into working for yourself. So I know when we last spoke about this, you talked about there's a bit of confidence there in your own ability. You're doing all right. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I did a few years, like I said, with an employer, and I was just outperforming everybody else in the office, and probably not through serious methodology or really good process. It was probably more down to being able to be a very good storyteller, which is absolutely needed in a sales capacity, but also I was very keen to understand the psychology, and I know you and I have spoken about sports psychology before, and psychology of sales, psychology of sports overlaps hugely. So when I was 23, I had a huge amount of arrogance. And you put it really nicely there, Kieran, and maybe I should start taking that route instead, that I was confident in my ability. But I think there was huge amounts of arrogance, and just kind of felt like I would be able to essentially go out and win the world over. I felt like I knew everything, and then it was a very quick, very steep learning curve that obviously was allowing me to kind of realign myself with actually how good I was, and where I thought I was, And in that learning curve, I went away and I got a mentor. I did a lot of coaching. I went to a training company and trained myself even further as well. So maybe, yeah, confident in ability was definitely there, but maybe slightly naively as well.
So there's a bit of learning to do along the way. I do find that as we, the longer you go in business, the more you realise the things you're good at and the things that perhaps are areas you can, it's better spent passing it on to somebody else and things like that. It's quite interesting, isn't it? And I know that with your first business then, so 12 Recruitment was your first start of the business, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
And tell me about some of the challenges you faced along the way then, that's in that startup process.
Yeah, of course. And this, I mean, firstly, I go into companies and get paid to help them to understand how to hire correctly. We always say it's really hard to get it absolutely right every single time, but you do learn from your mistakes. So the challenges and mistakes certainly allow yourself to grow. I saw a huge, huge challenges in 12 Recruitment. I guess, some non-significant ones or less significant ones, really trying to understand who the company was, our brand message, our identity, and how we were going to differentiate ourselves to actually put ourselves in a good position and allow these graduates to have a good platform for their future. But then on the other side, starting a business, reasonably young at 23 and very inexperienced, I had to learn all of these different things that I never really knew existed. So finance and accounting in business, that was a huge challenge. Operations and understanding how things actually click together, that was a huge challenge as well. And it was kind of like my own personal MBA and learning as I went on. But then, more significantly, we got to a point where we hired a few people, and unfortunately, there's a person that I hired who, if you want to look at it like embezzlement or fraud or whatever you want to put it under, but wasn't working legitimately in the business. And even though we had best intentions and wanted to help this person, we found that they were actually stealing money from the business. So
how did you feel when that happened? Somebody stealing from the business?
I think it's more the kind of emotional betrayal that you find. So, you can make money, right? Like if you hang it always on money and, the money that you gain and the money that you lost, you probably shouldn't be a business owner because there's always ups and downs. But on the other side, the kind of emotional impact of somebody that you onboard in a high position and somebody that you trust and somebody that you see their word as golden and, you want to help them out and, help them out personally as well as professionally, you feel like you're essentially put in a position afterwards of complete betrayal. So it was never really the commercial side. It was probably more the emotional torment that it created.
Obviously, I know you well enough to know that you're quite good at sort of learning from those mistakes. And I know in this case, it was this case. So what was the, on the back of that then? So you've had this, challenging moment, but probably, it's probably can affect, like you say, affects quite emotionally. But what practically did you look at in this to actually make a change and protect yourself?
Yeah, and I think this is the big thing. You have to learn and move on. I guess people will probably resonate with kind of gut feeling, and if you feel that there's something maybe slightly amiss, your better instincts are there for a reason. And we all want to be good employers. We all want to be great business owners, and we all want to be inspirational to the people around us. And typically we're very passionate about what we do, and we love the industry that we're in, and that's why we do it. But if there's some feeling in the back of your mind and in your gut that something's not right, it's definitely worth just really working out why that feeling's there. From more of a scientific point of view, it's even more important to double check things, and triple check things. A lot of the ways that this person was being able to to get what they needed was because of my leniency and because I trusted them. But I think, again, we have to look at business in a non-emotional frame of mind sometimes, and realize that actually, we are there to safeguard the business. We're not there to kind of give somebody a platform for them to get exactly what they want if we're not, being able to see the rewards from that as well. And then, maybe kind of personal reference checks is just as important as the professional reference checks as well.
I think that's really interesting. I think the point I got there for you is one thing that I kind of read between the lines here is that there's an operational thing there around reporting that just having a way of checking without it being it's quite difficult to walk up to somebody and ask some people questions that sounds like you're prying as a leader.
Of course.
Whereas having some form of reporting in place that can protect against that and block those sorts of things or spot those things, that sounds like a really useful way of overcoming that potential sort of personal barriers you might have. I know that's something I come up with quite often.
Yeah, definitely. And I was sitting in a seminar the other day about cybersecurity, and I think this is something that's hugely publicized at the moment. Cybersecurity and the reporting tools that you can get and the safeguarding tools that you can get to make sure that you don't get caught out. What are you doing from a business perspective, though? And cyber is one area of this. What other areas of your business could be vulnerable? And what can you do to make sure that you can really firm over any gaps in those vulnerabilities? So totally agree with you.
Cool. So obviously you're looking at 12 recruitment. Tell me a bit about the culture and how you think that's evolved over time in terms of that employee culture and what's happened. Because obviously you're at the forefront of hiring people, having a team yourself.
Yeah.
And obviously this is a sales environment. So there's most people's perception of a sales environment, fast paced, all that kind of stuff. Talk me through what the reality is. Yeah,
sure. And is it okay as I use this as a segue into COVID as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because I've certainly seen one of the biggest changes, in the last. Now I've run a business for 8 years, and when I first started off, I had this kind of picture in my mind of there's a certain way to create business and a certain way to create culture, and my reference to this is, if everybody's doing it, people are doing it for a reason. So we need to follow that crowd. Otherwise, we're going to have serious anxiety inside us that, we're not doing things right. And maybe that's why our revenue's not going up, or we can't attract certain talent. So to start with, the culture, it was central London, in Bank, it was fast pace, late nights, lots of going out to local pubs, enjoying ourselves, the holiday incentives, and a lot more about the kind of rewarding people with material goods and things that might be seen as kind of luxurious, but maybe slightly pretentious. And the culture was defined really by those things. And I think if you start to envisage sales, I think that's the commonality that you would see from company to company. Obviously, disruption started to come through, and disruptive companies started to change that. And you started to see a different way that the world could operate pre-COVID. So some of our clients then moved their workforce onto 4 days a week, but paid for 5 days a week. And some of them started to give people opportunity to work from home a few days. And even though that these things sound quite preliminary, quite nascent in their ideas, I don't think many companies were choosing this way of working because we were set in a certain track that suggested this is how we do it, and this is how we've done it historically, so it should always be done this way. And our culture fell into that pattern, hiring people who were up for long days, high pressure, and then a couple of beers after work. I think one of the biggest changes and most significant changes that I've seen, and certainly where we help our clients with, is actually, what do people want today? We were helping graduates in 12 recruitment, and graduates from 2010, which was my graduation year, and graduates from 2020, which is today's graduation year. They've changed so much So today it's more about kind of extrinsic gains and finding out more about if you're going to join a company, they want to find out more about their corporate social responsibility and what they're doing from that point of view. You know, they want flexible working hours. They want to work from home when they can. They want to be able to feel like they're contributing to the business and have higher levels of responsibility. And what COVID did, and you know, I hate to bring positives from a very negative situation, but they're obviously there. And I think what COVID has done is really shone the spotlight on business, and you know, the spotlight of, are we doing things in the right way for the world that we live in today? The most technologically advanced we've ever been. Are we doing things in the right way? And what we've seen change culturally is, you know, we've moved to a totally remote setup now. And I'm very lucky. I've got a home office, but what we were doing when lockdown eases even more is allowing our staff to use local offices and business parks to go in and do their work.
Like hot desk style.
Yeah, big time, you know, and I, from a operational perspective, you know, we're obviously saving huge amounts of money, but from a employee perspective, actually, we've not been listening when they're saying that they want these things. And then COVID came about, and companies did have to digitally transform quickly. And we help clients to do that as well. And we saw that, you know, the staff and staff members in some of these businesses were saying, well, you know, we've wanted this for quite some time. It's taken a very significant event for this to happen. Culturally as well, I think it's changed because there's more communication going on than ever before. And, you know, probably one of the biggest things that we've seen internally as a business is, you know, we're always over communicating because we have to, and, you know, the video conferencing tools. But as a result of that, you know, we're using apps, and we're using web apps, and we're using, you know, really nice technologies to move things in our project management cycles even quicker than before as well.
I'd like to put you on the spot if that's okay, Matt.
Of course.
So, obviously, you know, you talked about 2010, you talked about 2020 on that cultural base. And like, if we're looking forward, you know, clearly COVID is the kind of event that impacts people's perceptions on things like this. Now, I was reading on the Office for National Statistics published some guidance yesterday, actually, so really, really relevant stuff. So an update on the effects of COVID on the environment, on the not the environment, the economy. And one of the things it said is that the number of people placing, the number of job adverts that are currently advertised is 50% of what it was when it was 2019. Now, to me, that says that obviously less people are hiring. Now, that may change. We know that, you know, confidence is low, or people are not low, but people are wary at the moment. We understand that. But do you think that's going to change the employee landscape in terms of when, you know, when it's almost like a recruiter's market for, you know, rather than the other side, it's not the employees market necessarily in this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in the last 6 months, there's been a huge paradigm shift. Six months ago, we were coming into 2020, confidence being very high with what was known as a candidate-driven market. So the candidates were being able to control process. You know, the companies had a talent shortage. You know, and as a result of that, people would be getting 2 or 3 different job offers before making a decision. So companies went out and looked at employer branding. They went out and looked at, you know, how can we attract the right people into this business, because we know it's going to be few and far between. What happened in March was probably the biggest, most significant change that I've ever seen in such a short amount of time, which it turned to a client-led market. And again, it's Recruiter Chat for saying, you know, now the clients have that control in the job market. You know, the companies now have their pick, and the skills that are available to them probably are, you know, much more wider now. There's a wider set of skills that they can go in and pick and choose from that they wouldn't have seen only 2 or 3 months prior to that point. So absolutely, the landscape of employment has totally changed. Job seekers.
Does that change how an employer should recruit?
Hugely. Yeah, hugely. I think the reality behind this now is, a couple of months ago there was, and if we think about a sieve mentality, there was not many people going into the sieve, so we couldn't
Sorry,
really.
can you define sieve?
So like a funnel, not many people going into the top of the funnel, so not much is coming out at the bottom. Probably a better way of saying it. Whereas today, that funnel is being constantly filled. So employers can actually make more mistakes because they are almost given there's too much choice for them. And there was a study that was done in this, and I'll find it for you and I'll send it across, and we can definitely put it by. But going into supermarkets, you can get overfaced because there's so much choice in today's world. So employers now need to realize that they need to refine their skill set to interview more effectively. And actually, when they're planning to hire the right people, they need to start thinking, do we want to complement the skill set that we already have, or do we want to create an additional person in this business? So basically replicate a skill set. As a result of that, the way that you're going to ask questions, the way that you're going to assess people, that needs to change hugely. Where 3 months ago it was about identifying the right person, because typically, they would have a few more offers, the candidates would have a few more offers before saying yes or no. Today, people want your job, and they will tell you what you want to hear to get your job. But if you're not putting yourself in a position where you're assessing correctly, you can fall into the mistake of bad hires, and bad hiring costs huge amounts. I did a video on it, which will be released in a couple of weeks, but I think the stat was, if you pay somebody £42,000 as a basic salary and they're only in your business for 6 months, so they leave after 6 months, that person will actually cost you £132,000. So there's a huge gap in this.
Right.
So
that doesn't surprise me. I remember in other roles I've had in the past where I've been working and employed, you can see the cost of training. You can see the cost of the involvement of senior staff and things like that in the development of those people. So that doesn't even surprise me one bit. Is it so in your business then, like physically in your business, obviously your staff numbers at the moment, you've dropped a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, has your own process or capacity or thought process change in terms of how you're going to run your business and your in general? Obviously flexible working is one you talked about, and your staff and that kind of side of things as well, your hiring process.
Yeah, of course. And the short answer is yes. I mean, realistically now we're looking at this business through the clearest lens we've probably ever seen before. What the time has given us, and people have been suggesting it's been a spiritual alignment outside of commercial setting. But in your business, I think what you've been able to do is look at it and go, what are the blind spots that we can see now that we've got time to look out for them? When you're in the kind of rat race of your everyday in a normal situation, you don't look out for things that are going wrong as often as when you have the time to actually correct them. And what it means for us is, we have reduced our numbers of staff, but actually we've started to hire totally different types of people within the business. I came from a sales background that when you're growing your business, you would only hire salespeople. Support staff didn't exist. The salesperson would be the everything and do every single responsibility. Where now we've actually looked at this and started to cookie cut different roles in the business to allow for the business to move more effectively. We've also looked at some things that maybe we would have commoditized 12 months ago, and we're giving them to clients for free. And it's certainly not fully altruistic, because we obviously want a commercial impact from that. We want to build good reputation. We want to be able to show our clients that we know what we're talking about without being too invasive. We want to be able to be taking that digital space.
It's interesting.
But then, sorry. After you.
I was going to say, I think that one thing I've been banging on about over and over again to our clients is about the need for a kind of attention grabbing. And I know that you picked up on that before, and just grabbing the attention of your clients. And even if that means that you're not necessarily getting revenue from that immediately, it's about trying to keep in contact with those, build your networks, get the relationships, so that some of those businesses, when they do pick back up again, that they're buying from you, and because you're still in their forefront of their mind.
Absolutely.
I've seen some really cool assets that you've been creating. So you've obviously been keeping busy over COVID-19 and doing quite a bit. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so we took the time and looked at a couple of different areas. The business structure became too convoluted for a small business. So the first thing that we did in COVID-19 was work out what the core business was, what our brand message was, and how we wanted to be perceived. And this was a nice time for us to be able to look at that in detail, rather than stereotypical sales role, which is probably highly pressured and you have to go out and generate money all the time. If people aren't spending their money as they were before, well, we've got to look at what can we do to improve our business, so when the time comes, they will spend their money. So the organizational structure of the business was something we looked at. The second thing was marketing, and sales and marketing actually aligning properly. I'm very lucky that I've got good friends of mine who own marketing agencies, and we hadn't hired a marketing person in the past, but now we've hired a marketing person. And the reason why is because the new way of selling is much more indirect. So we have to go out and create the video series that we now have on LinkedIn, the content that we only post for our candidacy, which is used on Facebook, the YouTube channels. And that marketing and sales alignment really allowed us to start to have a very clear, continuous message to our audience, which was, this is what we do, this is how we do it. And if we want to work together in the future, this is how you can contact us. And that was more important for us actually than chasing money, because I felt that there was probably ways to make money during this time, but it was a very short-termist view to business, whereas operating in a way that was going to create more sustainability might take a short-term reduction in our turnover. And a lot of companies are in that situation. But after that point, we should have leaner organizational structure. We should have marketing in place that actually allows for people to come to us. Inbound is so much easier than outbound, and everybody knows that. We should have staff within the business who understand the mission of the business, that understand the values of the business, that understand what they need to do daily to pull in the same direction as everybody else in the business. And hopefully on the back of that in the future, we'd start to be able to grow our reputation, our client base, our candidate base, and obviously our money as well.
Do you have any plans then looking forward? Do you have any plans for, I suppose expectations is probably a better way of wording it. Expectations for what the job market might look like going forward, that recruitment hiring market, and also potentially just generally the sales market and sort of the perception of sales.
Of course. Starting with the last one then, the perception of sales. I still think people don't like salespeople. I don't. It's still a dirty word.
It's a dirty word, isn't it?
Yeah, we're in 2020 and it's still a dirty word. And everybody still thinks we wear flat caps and shout at people from market stalls. Sales has evolved hugely, and sales in today's world is starting to be seen much more as a professional role. That when you're growing up, people would say that is something that you can be proud of. I actually think that what will happen post-COVID will show the strength of sales, because more and more salespeople will be hired. The reason why is people will need to recoup revenue. And as a result of that, they will look at the time that unfortunately has been lost and think about how can we counterbalance that. So they'll go out and they'll get salespeople on board. But because of the time that they've had in this period, lots of them now understand the need for training. So I think you'll start to see, like a new era of salespeople coming through. And I think you'll start to see, a totally different approach to the way people sell. it will become more sophisticated. It will become more mindful. It will be probably less pressurized than ever before, because the amount of talent that it will attract, because there will be more roles there, will be much higher than in a typical economy.
So if I'm summarizing what you've been saying so far, is obviously it's becoming a client-led market rather than a candidate, an employer-led market rather than a candidate, which means you've got to be more careful at who you hire, take more time over that. But also on the back of that, particularly in the sort of sales roles, that you're looking at focusing on training on the actual sale, the skill of sales and the skill of growing that business and driving that revenue into that business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's people on this call that are going to really find that kind of little nugget quite beneficial. So tell me about this process. What other learnings have you had throughout COVID-19? Have you had any specific learnings or things that have kind of come to your attention, changed the way you think?
Yeah, definitely. And Kieran, I think you and I have had this conversation before, but one of my biggest takeaways from this is start to separate time and money. I hate the age-old baggage of time equals money. And if you're looking in your bank account today and maybe you're not feeling quite as happy as you were pre-COVID, just don't worry too much. Money you can make money. Money will go up and down. It will be the most volatile thing in your life, within reason. But time you can never ever get back. And that's one of the biggest things with this. You know, we as a business are moving forward towards a 4-day week, so our employees can have more time doing the things that they want to do. You know, time is incredibly important, and that's probably one of the biggest learning curves that I've gone through. I think a less philosophical one would be creating your individual plan and planning your days out properly is absolutely worth every moment that you spend on it. And this micromanagement term that you hear, you should do it with yourself. If you're getting micromanaged from an employer and that's not the way that you like to be managed, then of course it's not going to be good for you. But you know, how can you look at your productivity levels in a time that traditionally is tough? And that will be my third point, which I'll come back to. But can we get what we need out of the day? Our surroundings have changed. It's not normal. You know, it's not normal to be in our house for so long. We're just past 100 days, and I still know probably 80% of my clients are working from home. So how can we make the most of our working day without the typical change in scenery? And the productivity that you can find is by planning and spending time planning. That'd be my second learning curve, or second point of learning. And then the final one, which is just, you know, it is tough. And this certainly, I don't want this to sound cliched at all. But I have spoken to my family more than ever before. You know, I've spoken to my friends more than ever before. I've connected with people in my life that I haven't been in touch with, and the reason why is because it's very, very, very important to listen to yourself, and when you are going through a bit of a tough patch, understanding what you can do to kind of mitigate those feelings, reduce those feelings, and not be so hard on yourself all of the time.
That's quite. I've seen a lot of that at the moment because I've even I know in my own personal family, I might see external family quite irregular, but now we have every Sunday we've got a Zoom call booked in that all the family jump on and we all have a chat and natter, and we're almost talking more now not seeing each other because we know that we can't see each other. And I think there's a lot of people in the same sort of way where their kids are Skyping other kids and all sorts of things are happening, so people further afield they're seeing a lot more, so that's quite yeah, I think we're definitely seeing quite a lot.
For me, my concern is, like an elastic band, things snap back to their usual shape. We have stretched the way that we work over these last 100 days, and even on a personal side, you know, we've changed the way that we interact. It would be great if we can keep some of these things in there. You know, I done video calls with my granddad, and you know, I probably see him twice a year, and I've seen him more times on a video call than I absolutely ever would typically. I'm committed to him to make sure that we can continue that, because it doesn't take, you know, the time it takes to go to his house. I'm obviously in London now, and he's in Yorkshire. But you know, we need to keep it up post this point. You know, we need to learn from these things and keep it as part of our daily life.
Yeah, I think that's you're getting outside of business here, aren't we? But I think there's some philosophical points there that probably make a lot of sense. Cool. I think we just got conscious of the time, so I think we're going to leave it there. But I suppose if there's have you got any final points that you think, you know, that's, yeah, I think that'd be really valuable for people to know about.
Yeah, of course. So from a commercial point of view, I've obviously surrounded myself around sales professionals for the last 10 years. During COVID, I invested in a little setup to make sure that I could record all of my knowledge of strategy and recruiting sales professionals. Okay. So I'm actually on my LinkedIn channel, the Key Focus Consulting LinkedIn channel. We will be posting weekly videos that will help you to identify what needs to be in a strategy to make sure that you can reduce mistakes, essentially. So that's from a commercial side, and a little bit of a plug, Kieran. I promised I would.
Right. I'm going to put your website up there as well in case people are interested. keyfocusconsulting.com. Excellent. Well, look, thank you so much for your time, Matt. I really appreciate it. I'm sure the people on here, I know there's a couple of people that are starting businesses or in these early stages. I know they'll appreciate the talk about hiring people, because that's going to be a big part of their journeys. And others that are focused on having sight from a recruitment company around that will also be quite useful. What the market's like will be quite useful. So thank you very much for your time. And what we'll do is I'll send an email around to everyone with your contact details. And if you do get that link that we spoke about earlier, we'll drop that around as well. But thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Just as a final before we go, are there any questions before we close up? Fantastic. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate your